All right, welcome to part two. We're going to pick up with John Adams, that New England patriot from Braintree, Massachusetts, and as our second president. Now, he takes office right in this crazy time in Europe, especially France, where we have the French Revolution, where we see the nobility, the rich, the clergy, the royals, the monarchy being beheaded. And as you can see here, people's heads being run around on pikes and complete chaos with the French have their own revolution inspired by our American Revolution. So in this battle, we're going to have two people. We're going to have John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. And John Adams is going to win the election and take over as president for Washington in 1797 through about 1801. And a couple major things during his time in office. One's called the Quasi War, meaning that it never actually came to actual fighting between the U.S. and France, but it is pretty darn close. So the French Revolution, which is 1789, disrupts the monarchy, and that's of course a king and a queen. And Britain, Austria, and Prussia want to restore a French monarchy because if you think about it, especially Britain, they just lost America to a bunch of nobodies, a bunch of just poor country people as they viewed a lot of Americans across the ocean. So they're going to want some kind of a government that they recognize, and that's a monarchy. Now, some French revolutionaries are going to declare war on Great Britain, and France and Britain are both going to accuse the U.S. of siding with the other side. So France is going to say that the Americans are only supporting the British. Why would they do this? And the British are saying, well, they're just supporting the French, and that's not what we want either. So there we go. And that's the accent is free, just for you. Thank you very much. And part of that is because Jefferson is coming out as very pro-French, Adams is coming out as very pro-British. Um, and the whole issue, though, is that France and Britain are both encroaching on U.S. rights. They're both trying to limit what America can do in the world, and so we see a lot of events in here that we're not going to cover because I'm just trying to give you a real quick overview. But it is a major event and one that you will hopefully talk about more next year in eighth grade. Now, Thomas Jefferson, TJ, our third president, a thinker, a doer, a creator, an inventor, a geek, if there ever was one in the best possible way. Now, again, in this election, we're going to see Adams versus Jefferson. But this one's going to be a little different because this is called the Revolution of 1800. And this is the first time that we're going to see negative ad campaigns. It's going to be great. Jefferson's camp is going to come out and they're going to say things about Adams like he's blind, bald, crippled, and toothless, which is, just awesome. And Adams is going to come back and he's going to say that if you elect Jefferson president, there's going to be children writhing on a pike. So apparently, President Jefferson is going to impale children over a fire and roast them. So, I mean, that's the great stuff that we really don't hear in politics anymore as extreme. Now, one of the big challenges, the first challenges of Jefferson's presidency is something called midnight appointments, and presidents do this. If you're leaving office and you want to mess things up for the person next in line, then you just assign a whole bunch of people positions. You appoint a bunch of people right before you leave. So Adams does this with some Supreme Court justices, which have a lot of power. And it's going to be this very famous case called Marbury versus Madison, and it's going to come down to establishing the Constitution as the supreme law and the Supreme Court as its official interpreter. So basically, it's going to make the Supreme Court very, very, very powerful, wicked powerful, as they would say in New England. Another major thing in Jefferson's time in office was called the Louisiana Purchase. And in 1803, he manages to score this huge amount of land from France. And kind of the way it breaks down is France gives Louisiana to Spain after the Seven Years' War, uh, mainly to cover some debts, and so America doesn't get it. in Britain. Napoleon is going to regain the territory when he takes over, and America's freaking out because this is how America gets goods into the middle part of the country, out west at that time, up the Mississippi River. And so um, Napoleon ends up selling it at about 3 cents an acre, which is a ridiculous amount of money for that. And the reason why, largely, is because we have this massive slave revolt in the islands and what is going to become Haiti under Toussaint Louverture. And we're going to have these slaves rising up and fighting the French and fighting the British all around. And France is in desperate need of freeing up some of its military and some of its time. So after Jefferson obtains the Louisiana Territory, he sends out a couple of guys, Lewis and Clark, to explore, and they go all the way from St. Louis to the Pacific Ocean and back. And they've got a few goals. They want to explore the flora and fauna, the flowers and the animals, and they send home all these lavishly illustrated journals and diaries with pictures and descriptions and leaves and things that they find. They want to, number two, establish territorial claims. See, all this territory out west by the ocean is up for grabs, and America, as a new nation, wants to get a lot of that. They want to search for that Northwest Passage, and we talked about this before with European explorers. They believed there was a way that you could cut across Canada and get to the Pacific Ocean instead of going down around South America or around Africa. So they want to search for that. Spoiler alert, they never find it. And they want to keep Britain and the Hudson Bay Company, which trapped and traded and sold out of that area, in check. They want to make sure that they don't get too much power, because even though we're on a better relationship with Britain at this point in time, we want to make sure that we're just not friends with them yet. We want to make sure they don't get too powerful. Okay, about the same time, he sends out another guy, Zebulon Pike, and Pike goes out into the Rockies, and Pike's Peak is named after him in Colorado. We see a guy named Aaron Burr who comes up and tries to get part of the United States to secede, to leave the nation because of some personal issues and a desire for power. And he's going to end up in a duel with Hamilton, actually, and going to flee the country, and it's going to be a big mess. Another thing is we have the Barbary Pirates. There are some Muslim pirates off the coast of Africa and Barbary, and Jefferson is going to send in some navy to take care of that situation because they are plundering ships and stealing goods as pirates do. And it's a little incident in the big picture, but it has major implications. It has a major impact. It makes America visible. It lets the world know that, hey, we are here and we have a navy. We will protect our interests. And it gives some mad respect to a lot of Americans too. So that's always good. And then, Jefferson's going to turn around, and he's more French at heart than British anyway, and he's going to end up refusing to sell to those limeys, those Brits, in 1807 with an embargo trade act anyway. So lots of stuff going on during Jefferson's presidency. All right, to finish up this second section here, we're just going to real quick look at a guy named James Madison, friend of Jefferson's, author of the Bill of Rights, fourth president. And the big event during his time in office is America's second War of Independence, and that's the War of 1812. It's mostly a naval war, and with some rare exceptions of land battles in different places. Canada was a major fighting point down in the southeast, around New Orleans. We see the White House burned by the British in the War of 1812. They steal a lot of things from the White House, and Dolly Madison, James Madison's wife, rushes in and saves this very famous portrait of GW, and along with some china and some silverware and some things that she wanted to preserve, which are still in the White House or around at this point. So that's pretty cool. So here we see the burnt out remains of the White House. We also get the Star Spangled Banner from this. Francis Scott Key was on a prison ship and watched the bombs bursting in air over Fort McHenry in Baltimore, and writes our national anthem. And, Britain fails to take New York. It tries because, remember, it's in the middle of everything. We should remember that from the Revolution. And we see here America giving a good punch right in the face to John Bull, which is representative of Britain. And Britain eventually decides the war is unnecessary, it's too expensive, and they sign the Treaty of Ghent, and in possibly one of the most awesome peace treaties ever. No land was gained or lost. It gives this long lasting peace between us and the British. It heightens U.S. nationalism. So we're proud to be Americans again, all of a sudden. It is going to keep the American people from bickering back and forth. So New Englanders are going to hate Southerners a little less. Southerners are going to hate New Englanders a little less during this time. And one of the big things to come out, which hopefully you guys will talk about it next year, is this guy right here, this hero of the Battle of New Orleans, Mr. Andrew Jackson, from South Carolina and Tennessee later on. So that's part two, and then you guys will finish up part three with James Monroe and a quick look at some of the major stuff that happens during his time in office.